Welcome to another edition of Ahoy Hangout with the Full Site Outreach program. These are collaborative, fun, casual, all the good adjectives calls just to kind of chat about problems we're running into, things we're noticing, workflows, all that good stuff. In particular, this one is focused on block themers. So both people who are interested in block theme development and those who are actually diving in and just talking about workflows. I know, and I also want to leave space for talking about specific issues if there's anything that's on people's minds too. We don't need to be strict about that. But yeah, one of the things, just to set some context, one of the things I've been hearing since the advent of block themes is that it's not just adjusting to a new technology, it's also changing your workflow. So how people are actually approaching building block themes and also how they approach applying them for clients has shifted. And I think it's something that's like not discussed enough and also not well documented or presented. So it's been on my mind to dig into and have conversations about and to see what we can do to kind of make that path clearer. And then alongside that, potentially any tools you might want to adjust. Welcome, Evan. Yeah, that is my introduction that you just missed, Evan. Basically, long story short, we're talking about block themes and how it's both in adapting to a change in technology and a change in workflow. And so with that context in mind, I would love, I know a number of you on this call are block themers, and I'd love to hear pain points, things you've learned, quick wins, that kind of stuff from building block themes, then also hear from folks who might be interested in it. And keep in mind, do not hold back. This is not a time to be shy. This is a time to talk about the problem. So sometimes I think people are afraid to speak up when it comes to that. Not Ellen, though. I love Ellen's feedback. You're always the best at that. Yeah, I'll leave the floor to you all. So if anyone wants to kick off talking about how they approach block theme development, how it might be different than classic themes.
I remember I did like a few brainstorming notes in the Slack. I think I might have to pull them back up. What did I tell you there? I remember because we were like deep into color palettes and like finding with Manu together, finding a way to kind of sync them between our themes so we wouldn't have to like recreate. And I think last time we talked, we also talked with Rich a little bit about that. And so I think that's like just in the moment a big topic for us that like if you want to create multiple block themes, having like a synced color palette is really helpful. And like the naming of the color palettes, I think for all of us who've done that have been an issue, because once you create the names and the like, if you create patterns, you have the color names in, but I don't know, maybe it's too specific as well. But in general, I think the first tip would be to, like, in case you create multiple themes, to have like components and kind of sync them together to build a system. So like previously, and many of you know there's like, it was like theme after theme after theme. So we created individual like little projects. And now I think the opportunity is to like build components and then always sync them together. It's a little bit abstract, but then also like custom block themes for clients or individual project will be different again. But I think for everyone who is into block theming, I think creating components and then pulling them in for each project is super helpful. I think that's what we learned a little bit the hard way, but
naming. That was for me the worst problem at the beginning, because I was calling the color names like red, blue,
yeah,
and then
nobody
together
knew.
with Rich, then we make a difference with this so that you can switch the theme and have the same names. That's very important.
Yeah.
That would be good to that all teams have the same, probably the same namings for colors. Yeah.
You know, Richie blogged a lot about this, and it came up previously with like a theme design survey that we did, and it seems like it's rearing its head again.
Yeah, I'm a little bit torn, I guess, because when now that we're doing 2023 and working on different variants, it's interesting seeing like all the different ways that folks are coming up with naming conventions and trying to establish something solid. But I think at the end of the day, the big conflict, like if we like take a look at this holistically, like what's the big problem with, and I think it's that it's not that there's inconsistencies across themes. I think that would be nice, but not necessary per se. I think it's more so like if I set something to a color as a user and I switch themes, that color's gone. That's kind of the core issue there. So I'm wondering like, is there a way to solve that where it doesn't matter what slugs we use for colors like base or contrast or foreground or background? It doesn't matter if the theme.json file is doing it all. I think what matters is trying to figure out how do we map those colors when they change, I guess, for user input colors. So that's something I've been thinking a little bit more on lately.
Does it really matter? If you're switching themes, then other things will change. Your menu suddenly changes position, shape, color, fonts are all different. So if you're changing themes, why should you expect a color to remain?
I think the
I would
challenge, one of the challenges I see is that if you have those slugs all through your content, going and finding them is hard. If it's just in your header, that's just a template part and you can go make an edit. So that's the difference I see between the two.
Yeah, that's where I'd wonder if there's a way to like whenever I don't know, this is just just thinking way ahead, but like a way to when you switch a theme, like it's like, hey, like these are your old colors, these are the new colors. Like, is there a way to connect these? Like, I don't know what that looks like or feels like, but it seems like that is the solution, not trying to standardize all the values because they can be different. So if they can be different, they're going to be different. Even with 2023, we're seeing base and contrast instead of foreground and background, which is fine. I think it's fine, but it's the same exact. It's just different letters. It's the same situation.
I think that is an interesting point. Like switching themes would be more like a process of like mapping from one to the next versus expecting them to all kind of just intertwine better. I mean, I think the same, very similar experience with like navigation menus. Like you set up a theme and then you get all your menus right, and then you switch to a different block theme and like all my menus aren't working anymore. Like it'd be nice to be able to map it to a different, I don't know if mapping is the right word because that makes me think engineering, but.
Right.
So this
sounds smart.
So hi everybody.
Hi.
Hi. So I'm jumping in. I on this like this mapping thing. Which sorry if this doesn't make sense because I missed the first part of this, but we've been looking a lot at how design systems interact with theme.json. And this is like a design system exercise, right? Where you're like switching out one set of tokens for another. And one thing we've been getting pretty stoked on is there's like a developing web standard for design tokens, which kind of seems like probably part of the solution. Like if you're going to be switching out global style values and switching out themes that are just passing different sets of tokens into a like known quantity of core blocks that like do a known number of things, but just like passing them different design decisions, having some way to standardize the format of that seems pretty important, regardless of if you're like naming it differently or organizing it differently, which like everyone's going to do that differently. And there's, a dozen really developed design systems that all do it successfully in different ways. But at least having that like little thing be standardized is something that we've been looking at pretty hard. And I mean, theme.json is exciting because it gives you like a way to interact with that and like a place to suck in all of that stuff. But I don't know, that's the approach that we've been taking, is to just make theme.json interact with the web standard for design tokens. And then, but we're kind of approaching it from like a standpoint where like you've got a developer and like you're kind of like a technical person that just needs like a developer tool to help you do this, assuming like you're working with a design system and you know what that is and stuff like that. But
David's on the VIP side at Automatic, just for context.
Hi, sorry, that's important to know.
I know that, but I was like, I don't know if everyone else does. So yeah, it's really, I love talking to David because he's looking at this from a very interesting angle with the VIP side and the enterprise side. because
And I'm
the
a
system
designer.
has
I'm
to
like
work.
not a developer.
Yes, yeah. You have a very good grasp on all this stuff, though. It's really interesting to see what you're butting up against. It's interesting that you all are bringing up theme switching, because I don't know. I'm going to briefly share my screen, but this came up a while ago around how theme switching could work, and like an exploration that we did, and talking about, I think someone said, like, how could you say, like, adopt these new styles, and like this kind of exploration. So I can make this bigger. So like apply existing styles, apply existing layouts. Like, what could this actually look like if you're switching between themes? And I think some of this relates to what we were talking about, and a lot of what I think has come up before, and actually being able to choose. So before switching, it's like, what would it look like if you gave the option of, like, you can keep this or you can switch between it? Because I think part of what's also different about this is block themes become components almost. It's like, I want the patterns from this, I want the templates from this, I want to keep the colors from this, and being able to switch between. These are what I would call like older designs at this point almost. They still apply, but I'm curious what it looks like in today's world. But yeah, it's a very slow walkthrough.
But I think
It's
it
interesting.
shows.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
It shows perfectly like we talked about this before, like being able to choose, like, which is like in Figma and stuff is pretty common. Choose, like, do I want to import, export, and not like all of the style variations, but particular parts. I think that's like one of the biggest things we're like struggling with. It would be so smart, like export, import your custom color palette, export, import the theme color palette, the fonts, the layout differently, like just as components. I think that's like something's like really missing at the moment for us, like already working with users. It's like there's so much potential in styles, like global styles, but it's not like there's not much there at the moment to work with, which is a little bit sad for us.
Yeah, the UI is pretty, you like can't do a lot like through the site editor, but in like, we've been having a lot of fun with theme.json. Like theme.json cracks a lot of it wide open, which has been pretty exciting. As I think, so you bring up Figma, we've been like, we just finished building an integration for Figma with theme.json. So we're managing our design system in Figma, and then exporting colors and exporting styles and design tokens through this like common web standard into theme.json, which is working pretty well for us. It's like, it's dumping more into theme.json than it's like currently really equipped to like handle. Like there's a lot of stuff in there that it just lives as CSS variables and it doesn't know what to do with it. But it does kind of provide like a possibility for like, if you can do this at like a developer level where you can sort of like parse out these like chunks of tokens and standardize them, then it, you know, you could build a UI for that later. And you could say, yeah, like dump it in, you know, if you have a standard set of tokens, import here through the site editor, it drops into your global styles.
Yeah, it's obvious there's all the potential is there. Just get it to the users and we're happy.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, what, if you all make use of, I know Caroline and I have been working on like a handbook page around tools for building block themes and classic themes as well, but like the role of something like a create block theme plugin, or you know, Caroline is like full citing generator. Like, it's very interesting to think about those tools as well and how they can evolve in the meantime, because I know I've heard for some people it's perfect to get started with, and to have like kind of like a almost an underscore style way to get going. And other people are like, I want to start completely blank. This is all distracting and noise, and I can't figure out my way through theme JSON. So I'm curious if do you all use these like plugins and tools? Do you think they should be evolved more? Is there like a tool that we're missing still? Like the Figma thing that you're working on. I mean, David, you already know this, but I'm like, I want to do something with that, getting that out there. I think it's so cool to see what's going on. This makes me want to force you to demo it, but I wouldn't do that.
I think like a theme. You go ahead.
Sorry. I thought, Carolina, didn't I see? Hey, yeah. Hi, everybody. Carolina, didn't I see on your Twitter you were working on something or just experimenting with like exporting Figma values to a theme.json? That looked really, because that is something I've had in the back of my mind, just never taken the time to well, actually, I have cracked open the Figma plugin API documentation once or twice, but never beyond that.
It's real now. You don't need to do your own. There's an off-the-shelf plugin that does it for you.
Of exporting to theme.json?
It exports to the web standard for design tokens.
Oh,
and
okay.
then you can use Amazon Style Dictionary to take that and put it into theme.json.
Huh.
So there's a little workaround, but there's like actual supported off-the-shelf stuff to do it now, which is cool. But sorry, Carolina, also, I'm a huge fan. I'm on your like fullsiteediting.com like all day, every day lately. So,
thank you.
great resource.
Well, I made some progress. I didn't know about these the standard for design tokens and export. Of course, I tried the design token plugin for Figma, which does export to JSON, but not in a format that you can just copy it and put it in Team JSON. Still has to be, you know, switched into the format. I need to use TypeScript, so I need to learn more TypeScript to be able to do more progress with it. Getting the colors into a format that you can actually use in Team JSON was not as easy as I hoped from Figma, for example. Fixed content is a little bit easier, but then you have, you know, we have, of course, blocks that use both text and colors at the same time, and yeah, I have to work around that somehow to get all the data that's needed. But I wanted to ask David if the tool that Automatic is using, is it open source? Are you able to share it with us?
Yeah, I want to share it. I think right now it's just like, so our approach right now is we're just like building this stuff for WordPress VIP's marketing site. So we're just building this coming from like the enterprise perspective that there's a lot of big enterprises that use WordPress and everybody wants to use design systems, and Gutenberg is like, is a design system without saying it's a design system. Like it's trying to do all the same things that design systems do, even though it's coming at it from a very different perspective. So we're developing sort of all this like package of integration stuff to make it work for our own sites. And then the idea is to just like develop that and share it with the community. But I can definitely share, like, I gotta go talk to my developers and find out how I can share it with y'all. But I mean, it's pretty like, we haven't really done anything groundbreaking because there's just like good stuff available off the shelf now. Like that Figma tokens plugin exports it into a like a standard, and then other bigger, smarter design departments have written really robust tools for transforming design tokens into like every format under the sun. So at this point, we're basically thinking of Gutenberg as just like another component framework that a design system would support. So like a design system supports React, Vue, Gutenberg. And it's a bit more complex than your typical design system component because it includes a backend user interactive portion to every component. So it has like this whole nother layer that a typical design system component just like doesn't have, which adds complexity, but it's doing the same thing. So yeah, no, I posted the link to stuff, but I'll share for sure.
I'm trying to get David to
engineers.
get some Gutenberg Times stuff on there too. So that's one of the things, I think one of the things I talked about with David is like, we should just get a Gutenberg Times like live Q&A about this kind of stuff and get something out there and then see what we can do to kind of document officially if it comes to that. Like I know we open sourced, have the open source designs in the Figma for Make Design, and it'd be cool to have like more documentation around that. Yeah, thanks for these links. These are excellent. I'll put these in the notes too.
Yeah, I can post a little demo in the Slack channel that this link got posted into too. I could post a little, I could show you a little what our pipeline is doing, but
your demos are great. So that'd be really cool to see.
Sure.
Yeah, that would be awesome. It's funny, we've just been playing with the, because you mentioned it too, Carolina, with the Figma tokens plugin, right? Mano, you've been playing around with it, like seeing how we can use it. I mean, I think for us, like building more for end users, it's just the limitations we have like on the end user side at the moment in like what they can actually do with it. I think it's just like working kind of around these like pretty hard limitations at the moment. That's that we're still dealing with. That's a little bit difficult.
Can you say
Still.
more there?
Yeah, just what I mentioned, for instance,
Okay.
trying the like export. It would be cool to export import the color palette, or then just recently I ran into like one of the biggest like end user requests is like, oh, I want to change my font, or like how can I change fonts? And like I always have to say like there's not a really great way at the moment. And then like I ran into this issue that I provided fonts sort of as a workaround in a theme, like in a block theme via style variations. So I left everything the same, just put the different fonts in different theme JSON style variations, which I think worked fine. And then I realized switching style variations for users mean, and I posted that too. And I think Carolina, you know about that. Like it means you lose every custom color you applied when you switch back. And I was like, whoa, this shouldn't happen. Like, so a user sets a custom color and then switches to a different style variation, switches back, and the customization previously in the style variation is lost. And it's like, that's like a huge limitations to even use style variations at the moment, because that just doesn't work.
Sure.
Mhm.
Guess I
I've been
believe there are
attacking
use
about
cases
this for
both.
like 2 months. Oh, I'm sorry, Caroline.
I believe there's use cases for both, because you're actually switching a style variation. You want to see the colors that someone else has chosen for you, in this case, the team developer.
Yeah,
And
that
if
is
the
true.
palette is different.
Yeah,
It will overlap.
I think, yeah. So totally with you on that. Yeah, totally true. But then switching back to the previous style variations, wouldn't you want your customizations you put into that previously to be still there?
Yeah.
This is
Yes. That was so good. That was so good.
It's like it seems like a bug. And then yeah, just the biggest thing from like our users, and like we're really pushing end users into the block themes. Like I think we are one, like Anna does the same. We're like, and Rich, and they like, we want to switch fonts. Like that's like the one of the biggest thing. And then for us in a system, like what we're trying to do, like building like a collection of block themes, patterns, and kind of having theme, like we're coming up now with the system having theme patterns and then having like building patterns. That's our solution just for our workflow. Like that's what we came up with as a solution, because as I saw on Twitter just yesterday, like who are we building this for? Is it like end users who want ready to go themes, or is it like more professional, like maybe people who work in Figma or Webflow or so, and they want to really build stuff? Like this is a big like question people have, like who is it this tool for? And so we have like, funnily, we have both customers, like some. So we're coming up with this system for like a building platform and ready to go like patterns, like one click, this is a theme, here you go. Like we kind of need both, like, and that's it's a little bit. So we're coming up with like both like two tools of, and this has been an issue, like patterns, should they be like really ready to go, or should they be like building platforms? I think that's another like thing. I think also Anna and some others like kind of not struggle, but kind of finding a way to how do we work with that?
Yeah.
I would be so
I can
interested to
agree.
hear everyone's answer to that question. Like, who is this for? Like, or what is everybody? Who is are y'all's users? Because I ask myself that question every day.
Yeah, there was just yesterday a linked a Twitter thread, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is like with, and like we really have end users there, and like they're both. I said to them that it's both user ways, but both work very differently and both want different things. Like,
I think this is where like the curation stuff also comes in, because like in theory, like part of what these various tools are allowing, and even I don't know if you all have seen the patterns and sections work, and a lot of the stuff around like locking down and having governance around patterns, and it's being able to offer really all of it, which is so confusing. But then I'm wondering, like, how do you market that, like from a practical standpoint, if you're like a block theme that maybe keeps everything wide open versus a block theme that maybe has like a more curated approach where it's like you more plug and play your content, but you're not going to maybe even mess with things more than like style variations. Like that could be one way to pitch a block theme, is like, you know, don't think about anything, we handle it all for you, and you can just switch between these very simple tools. And then on the flip side, you could have a block theme where it's like hack it, make it your own, you know, like dig into every little micro detail that you want. And building for all of these is very difficult, as well as like the spectrum in between. So yeah, it's interesting to hear from the vantage point of a block theme author, because I can imagine you all are trying to find the niche too.
For me, the biggest struggle now is what I noticed from the user side are those two editors. You know, when a user go and open a page and do everything with block patterns, it's looking great and perfect, but then you need to explain, okay, if you want to change the styles, you need to go to the other editor that are pretty same looking, and this is confusing them. Why I can't do this all in one? So open the page, put the header, footer, patterns between, and choose the style. That's a bit tricky for now.
I think that's when we're designing for an enterprise user, which is pretty fundamentally different than just like an individual user. But the way we get around that problem is we don't let them customize anything in the post editor. You know, like we give you blocks, the styles are baked, and if there is like the design team and the dev team makes those decisions for the content creators. So like if we want them to have the ability to customize something about the way that block looks or the way that it behaves there, it's very defined and the options are very limited. And then everything else is handled by supporting teams of people because it's assuming a large organization. But if you're like trying to get both of those together of like cool design dev team and content editor, and like those people both need to now do their job inside of the Gutenberg interface and to be effective, that's like tough. I mean, it's ambitious, which is part of what excites me about it, because it's like trying to take what a design system does, which is like a complex thing, put a usable UI over top of it, and then ship it to tons of end users and have them successfully build things with it is super ambitious. It's like very exciting, but yeah, rife with pitfalls, rife with like lots of problems.
That is true. What are we doing? That is true. For us, it's just like really, as Anne, as you said, it's like it's super funny that we have like all these different kind of end users that trying to do, and at the moment we're kind of trying to figure out the common ground where we should like first dig in, because we can't solve like every wish or something. So we kind of try to find the easiest way to kind of ship things that sort of work and don't frustrate people. But it's really like it's been a try and like error, as something as simple as the pattern. It's been like, okay, do we build like ready to go patterns, and then oh my gosh, like we built this pattern just for one theme, that's not great. Like how can we build a pattern that works on multiple themes? That's we are working with that now. We came up with like a pattern library, like a building base pattern library. So we like also for us to kind of, I think that's what the main topic was here too. Like how can we like make our job smarter, because there's so many opportunities like for theme building to be smarter. And that's first thing why we even started with block themes, because we were so like kind of bored or frustrated to build theme after theme. We're like, no, we're not doing that anymore. It's not smart. So I think, yeah, just finding even ways for us, like we work with these like pattern components in Figma and then pull them like from the building patterns we're building now into multiple themes. That's kind of like the workflow we came up to save us time and energy. And make
Design
then
system.
that available for our end users who are like more advanced users as well. And I think we just like pitched that in our little community, and they were like, oh cool, yes, please give us that. And I think so, yeah, there is definitely like advanced users building like websites maybe for end clients and stuff who are really interested in that.
That's where, like, if you're already like, if you're in Figma and you've got a workflow from like Figma into block theming, and like it's just so cool. Like there's so much possibility there for it to just be a really nice experience for designers and developers like me. Like I'm working on, we're rebuilding part of our website right now, and like I'm not a developer. I know a lot of CSS and that's kind of it. And I've been able to do most of the core block work myself now because it's CSS and theme.json and like a little bit of JavaScript and PHP when you got to register stuff, but it's like Googleable, which is not the case for like classic themes where it was just so much more involved. And now it's like, oh dang, this is, you know, this is as accessible as like, you know, the static sites that other designers are spinning up, like where they, you know, learn enough React to knock together like a Gatsby site or something. And they're like, this is so easy. Like block theming is just as easy, but then you have WordPress behind it and it has like all of these baked in features, which is, that's what excites me the most about it. Cause like, if you can crack that workflow, like make that function, it's gonna be rad. Everyone's gonna love that. But
did you all make any missteps on the way to finding these workflows? Like, were there any things that like later on you were like, oh my God, I could have been doing this the whole time? Like what sort of stuff comes to mind with that?
We have a whole list. I think that it's been like like with Anna together, like we've talked about that. It's been rough, like it's been a rough year, to be honest. It was like, it's exciting and fun, but like having a small business to run on these changes, like it hasn't, like it's been rough, like to be honest. Like, and I think, I don't know what happened to us that we are like I said, it was a little bit like from coming from WordPress.com and like having them like, okay, we're switching to block themes, and we're like, okay, we do the same, and then like not really realizing what we were getting into last year. So yeah, there was no roadmap, like nothing, like we just kind of went all in, and it's been rough to kind of maintain a small business on top of these changes and figuring all these cool new stuff out. And yeah, Anna, I think we're on the same page with that.
Yeah.
and there's been like many mistakes, like creating a system, then trying to give users something to use, like building actual themes, and then having like pre-built patterns, and then realizing, like pulling back with the patterns, like seeing like, oh, that's not really smart to only put the patterns in each theme. We have to build like a pattern pool to work on. I think that's been one of the things we're like pushed out, like themes with pattern, then kind of pushing back now, getting like only a certain number of patterns in each theme and having the other patterns in like a pool we can also work with. Then, as we mentioned in the beginning, the color palettes has been like a mess. Then like we have our own block collection too, which has been really helpful to give us like a stable resource we can work with, what I know, like if I need something, I can build this block and we can use it, and I know like it's not going to change or something because I'm responsible for it. If you don't have that, like I think it's even harder to react to all these changes, like with spacing and stuff, like it's been like non-existent, and now you have to keep up with that. I think that's been super hard for beginners. Having so many limitations, and then kind of like keeping on track with all these new things coming up, and then maybe updating your themes. Then the header and navigation's been painful. Anna, maybe you want to pitch in with that?
Yes, it's still a bit navigation part. It's much better, but it's still a bit tricky for the users. But I must admit that it's I'm overexcited that we can build themes with block patterns, and they are finally designed. I must say that, and I think they are easier for the users because they can use block patterns instead, creating different child pages to create just the front page. So that's the positive part, but it's very hard, like Ellen said, you need constantly to follow everything and to do updates, changes, and also to follow your users, to educate them, and to stay. Yeah, it's a bit messy, but I'm also excited about it. Yeah. Yeah, hopefully till end of the year, it will be a bit steady. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
also
think
wonder how much of this.
we need to keep up, educating the users. We started to write different posts about how to do to start with the new editor and how to use it. We will explain little parts, and hopefully this can help a bit. Yeah.
I'm also hopeful that a lot of the stuff on Learn WordPress can also help, and that we can build like better onboarding into the experience itself. So we're not just dropping people in, and it's clear like what's global versus local. Like there's so much I feel like that needs to be done around refinement still. That it's like, and to be honest, like 6.1 has some of that, but like there's so much other stuff that I'm like, we're still like too in the technical, like I don't know, whatever. And I'm like, we need to be thinking about the experience more and how this stuff connects, and what is it like to switch from a classic theme to a block theme to a different block theme, or what is it like to actually find patterns or to edit a template part and to know that it's in all your templates. Like, what is that experience like? And how do we build for like the 80% case, and especially the navigation block? We have a long ways to go there. I think 6.1 is going to have some good technical stuff in there in terms of preserving the navigation a bit more when you're switching themes, but the actual like user experience of it feels really rough still.
So we've been refactoring our navigation block right now for on site, and so when we built that, we decided to make our own, just because the core nav block just like couldn't do the stuff that we needed it to do at the time. So we're like, okay, let's just make our own. And I mean, this was a year ago when we built this. So it was before full site editing launched to core when we were building it. So we sort of built it with like what had been released at the time, and built it as like a serialized block series of like nested custom blocks and some core blocks with some custom JavaScript and stuff to handle the interactivity. And now going back to refactor it, to sort of bring it up to snuff with like block.json, like a bunch of new stuff that's been released. I've sort of been eyeing, like sort of proposing to our team at least sort of the standard that like if you have a block that is that complex, that like the sort of the bar that I've been saying is like if it's requiring complex interactions beyond links or buttons. So like if it's modal, if it has any states, if it has like anything that complex, or if it requires to like query data or do any sort of calculation in the background to like present the content, then what we're trying is just making that a dynamic block and just say like that should be dynamic. You know, like it's something that if you try and make it out of a bunch of nested blocks that are all individual, it's brittle. Like it's just hard. And especially something that we're wrangling with right now, which like, I'm sure y'all have experienced, is core updates. When you're using the core blocks, you have to manage your styling so carefully. And if you don't go into Gutenberg trying to style Gutenberg the way Gutenberg wants to be styled, you're going to pick fights with core updates down the road. And like, you know, we have situations where like, oh crap, like the footer layout broke because suddenly the core columns blocks flexbox styling overrode our custom wrappers grid styling and broke it on an update, you know? And we're like, wait, what happened? Like, and it's just lots of style updates and things like that where we're like, okay, I think we're sort of finding the line between like, cool, this is like core block zone. This is where like the core blocks are superstars and are very flexible. And then above a certain point, the approach just feels like it needs to be different, or else it just is setting you up for struggles in trying to support it. And this is assuming like in our world, we're supporting it with teams of designers and developers, like not trying to, you know, answer support tickets for an end user that we've sold a theme to. And they're like, help, everything broke. Like it's not it just the situation becomes increasingly difficult. But if there was a way to have, you know, if you make a custom dynamic navigation block or something like that, to have that still be able to be styled in a standard way so that it is rethemable. And if you switch out a theme or something like that, and you're like, cool, I want to, you know, change my global styles, that it's been built in a way that it still interfaces with theme.json, which is where like the whole standardization kind of design system-y kind of question, I think, goes down the rabbit hole. But that's kind of what we're grappling with. But again, thinking of an enterprise user where they can control their world, and we can be like, cool, you can control your system because you can build it and support it. But for the community at large, it's like an interesting conversation to have, I think, is like, are some things just too hard to be like 6 nested blocks? And is it just trying to make it do something that it shouldn't be doing? And maybe that block should just be different and it might make it easier, but I don't know. We're testing that. I'll let you know how it goes. We sort of hit it with our own, we're like, that's not working. Let's try this differently.
Well, it's really helpful to have those though. Like, I think that's part of why it's like, as we each find our explorations, like reporting back problems and blockers, or like, or this works, maybe core needs to like learn from it. I always think that that's cool when that can happen. Godspeed though.
It is interesting to hear that. Like we have kind of like, we run into the same system, especially as we like started out like super early with blocks. I was like super cautious because I saw the blocks being like very rough, the core blocks. I was like, I don't really trust it. Like what happens? Like they're gonna build on that. So the first thing we did like way back was to build like custom blocks that I knew I could control. And we could, so I think that's why we could like kind of early on build kind of stable layouts for us, but we still want to support the custom blocks. But I think it's super hard for block themers. I think others can maybe like speak more about that, to only rely on core blocks. And I don't know if this is being pushed. It feels a little bit like we are being discouraged from using our own like custom blocks in block themes. I kind of feel that it's maybe just WordPress org like being that way, but I feel like, are we discouraged to build custom blocks, or aren't we like, shouldn't we like build a number of cool like small blocks and work with that? So it's like, I don't know, it feels a little bit difficult to, because I thought it's cool to have a selection of custom blocks or like my own blocks to build on top of these, like have it like premium usage, because it always felt like super hard and limited to just build with core blocks. And we didn't do that from the start. And I actually feel pretty lucky because, yeah, like you said, like the group block grew with so many things. And I'm lucky that I just used it to kind of group things and didn't do anything else with that, because otherwise, yeah, all the patterns would be like needed updates and all these kind of things. I was like, whoa, yeah, that would be like super hard. And I think, yeah.
I am using just the core blocks and building block patterns.
It's super hard. And I think like more updates, I don't know, like that sounds hard.
I think, tell me if this resonates at all. I think, so we've like, I'm sort of pitching this like kind of 3-tiered approach to like, kind of like a question of like, what kind of block should I build? You know, like, should I use a core block? Should I build a serialized custom block that's static, or should I use a dynamic custom block? Or sort of like the 3 tiers that I'm separating it into. And if it's a situation where a user is going to be interacting with the block in the editor a lot and like using it constantly to build ephemeral pages, like in blog posts or like landing pages, stuff where it's just like, it wants to get recombined into patterns, it wants to get remixed. And the design of it is simple enough that it can do that without needing just like massive amounts of conditional stuff to make it behave, then it's like core block will be good. If it needs to be like specific design wise, or like requires some sort of governance or like locking down of options or permissions to have it render in a certain way, but doesn't have any complex interactivity or data, then like a custom block might be a good solution, where you just make a static custom block that just looks a very specific way. It's like styled very specifically, or like has some specific behavior that you can't really achieve with a core block. And then if it needs fancy interactivity on top of that, then perhaps a dynamic block. That's like what we're floating. That's what I'm trying, because we're experiencing all the same stuff where it's the core blocks are great for like what they're intended to do, which is sort of like high interactivity in the block editor, lots of flexibility, designing mostly simple things. Like for that, they're great. But if you try and like take them and force them into like designing an entire site with core blocks that's like very complex, you start having to address a lot of issues and like work around a lot of stuff. At least that's what we encountered.
I think one of the issues probably that like block builders and theme builders are like two different sets of people. I think on WordPress.org especially, you have now these block collections, and I think just a few people like Rich and us have been like doing both things. Like, and I think there's like this division between like blocks and block themes, almost like at the moment on WordPress.org, it feels like, yeah, only core blocks are like encouraged to use or something like that. And like I said, I would love to add our patterns to the plugin library and things like that. It's just not really interacting greatly on the WordPress.org level, or like, so yeah, I think we're a little bit always stuck with it. I was so excited to build blogs, and then okay, themes last year, and kind of like it's great, let's combine this together, but it's not really like there's no real encouragement to have like both come together. I think that's a little bit weird, I feel.
If I can speak for the team review part and why I'm not, a team representative anymore, but I have enough experience to answer. And I believe that you already know this. The reason why you can't require a custom block and why you can't include the block in the theme is because when the user decides to switch the theme, their website breaks. If you have
That's
a plugin, then you will just, activate and deactivate the plugin as many times as you want for different themes. But if your plugin is in the theme or is required for the theme to work, then the website will actually break. And we can't, it shouldn't be allowed on WordPress.org to bundle that kind of things. Now, if you build a website for a client, use as many custom blocks in any way you can and want and need, please. If you have, customers that they're going to be with you, you're going to support them for several years, you know them, maybe even call them friends. Yeah, do custom solutions for those as well. But not on WordPress.org, where you're going to distribute the theme for free. And users might not have the same connection to you that they will go to you and find the correct answer easily when their website breaks.
It is true. I think that one of the solutions that would be so cool, and I thought like last year, like I thought, oh, this would be coming pretty soon or something, is that it would be cool for theme JSON. Like I don't know, like technically if it's possible to kind of set the, like, okay, this block is active on this theme, like to kind of make theme JSON like talk with the blocks.
I would like that.
Yeah,
Me too.
We sort of
That's
already do that with patterns. We preload patterns from the WordPress patterns directory. It's a little bit different because the plugins would be probably installed and activated, like the block plugins instantly. If it was like a block plugin, so there's probably some stuff to think about on that and some experience around that. But I think that would be ideal if a theme said like these are the 5 blocks that should be active because I'm using them within the patterns. Probably.
And then deactivating ones that the theme doesn't support. That's something that we're doing too, is like, if we're not offering styling for certain core blocks, turn them off. So there's no bad options within the interface.
But I thought if your plugin is in the plugin directory and your template includes that plugin, there is a notice, right?
Yeah, after you, if you preview it, you'll still see like the mist.
You still have to activate it. Yeah, you still have to do that step yourself. One of the things that I tried to make happen for WordPress.org was that the team should at least be able to recommend plugins, like actually have a list visible on the team's page that these plugins are supported, and there is no support from the community to actually do that for WordPress.org, unfortunately. And
But-
people are still scared about requiring plugins for the team to work. And this is different. This is, recommending plugins that enhances the, the building experience and the website and the team, but not to require them. So the team will actually work without it. It will be better with it.
Has anybody experimented with having some sort of fallback built into a custom block? This is something that I was just talking with some folks about this week, because we're having these situations where we're exploring like doing a lot of dynamic blocks, and we have customers on VIP that do exclusively dynamic blocks for a bunch of reasons, and just sort of examining like, is that okay? Like, is that a bad idea? We're just sort of thinking that through and the implications of it. And the main thing is like, if like your pages and posts just become a bunch of references to React apps that get dumped on the page on page load, then it's becoming something else that's like going to be problematic if you try and scale that up. And what some of the core developers were telling me is it's possible to do just kind of a hybrid approach, where your block could save some of its content to your database and then use something else to render it on the front end. So like maybe there is the core nav block saved to the database, like maybe it uses a core fallback, but can take the content of that and pass it to something fancier. Like, has anyone tried that? That's something that we just sort of bumped into this week. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. Like, could there be a hybrid approach that kind of makes it a little bit more bulletproof, but opens up more possibilities? Like, I can see decoupled folks being kind of jazzed on that. Like if there are a set of blocks that's like a bit more friendly to decoupled applications that doesn't save so much HTML to the database, or like, I don't know. Has anyone tried that?
My brain immediately goes to documentation. Like as we're talking about all of this, I'm like, oh, we really need to get best practices. Like if you're trying to do this, here's what's been tried. But yeah, I don't know. It's all really good.
I think the whole block theme shift has been very interesting, because traditionally, like we have our theme code that's like the code, and then the content is in the database. But like with full site editing, it's like a lot of these templates end up being in the database too, or like even like versioned in the database. So it's like your theme might have one version in the code, but like it's actually running a different one in the database. Like as we develop themes, it gets confusing sometimes. Like, oh yeah, we have to remember to like export the change that we just made and then save it back and then commit it to our repository or something. Like it's kind of been like a little more disjointed than I would like. But like, I think once you get used to that difference, it's nice. But like coming from like traditional theming, it's like, oh, like I write all my code in this file and then I commit my changes and it's all safe. But like now we can make edits to the theme in the database, and there's like even versioning for that too. It's just like you're saying, like even at the block level, it's like the content usually is in the database, but sometimes it's not. It gets kind of disjointed.
There's also, I want to plug a handbook page I'm working on around like handling updates and how that's shifted with, like I've seen for a while, I saw people thinking they could just like, oh, I'll just update the pattern and it'll update everywhere. And it's like, no, you need to use a reusable block or a simple part for that. And like explaining that up front as you're building stuff, because this has been like a reoccurring pain point, is all of a sudden, if someone hasn't thought about this and then they're like 6 months in, it's like, oh crap, how do I update all this stuff? And like, when is it actually, like, what are the user expectations behind this? So I'm trying to put together a resource with some
Same
folks.
with templates and template paths. Users get really confused, like they customize it and then we update something in, like that's actually one of the biggest like issues we face. Like we update something, improve something in this template part or template, and it's like, how do users get it without losing that's actually not working at the moment.
Triggering block recovery and dumping their whole global navigation, like when you update the code.
I think there are experiments going on though, how to alert users that there is an update from the team developer, and this is how you can make a comparison. I've seen some designs around that on GitHub. I haven't seen it actually working with code, but I've seen, the discussions and some suggestions for it. But it's
that sounds good.
And take some time.
There's also some thought around we have reusable blocks and like the syncing mechanism between the two, and making just content editable. So like the markup can change or the attributes can change around it, but being able to select parts of it that can change throughout. So like that could be one of the solutions that work here too. If like the header, logo, and navigation parts could be completely unique, but the structure of the header could be changed at any point, something like that. But that's very complicated part of it.
Yeah, we need something in between reusable blocks and patterns, really.
This is so validating to just hear other people say this out loud. I've never been to one of these things before.
I was hoping you joined
in this moment.
Yeah, I was like, David and I have a lot of the same conversations I feel like I have with a lot of you. So I was like, all right, let's get in the same room. Yeah, this is great. I want to be mindful of time, just because I know my brain will start breaking if we go longer than an hour. But does anyone have any like final thoughts or wish list items? Or I feel like we covered so much stuff, and I think this is a good reminder for me to keep doing these, and probably focus a little bit on the blocking experience when we can learn from y'all's users, and also just the workflow. I think we're kind of at that stage of things, getting things documented.
I suppose one of the most important things we can do is actually go to the support forum and see what problems users are running into and what type of questions that they are asking. Yeah.
We have some folks doing that with 2022, as well as they've started moving into the other default themes. And there's been some good stuff coming out of that, including recommending using the create block theme to create some child themes, which I thought was interesting because they've run into limitations. So yeah, this is great. And especially since I know the block theme meetings aren't happening anymore, I'm going to try as I can with the outreach program to make sure there's still like an emphasis and space for these discussions. And I really appreciate all of you showing up to this and being honest and open, and we can figure it all out hopefully together as we get feedback like this. But yeah, as much as we can document and share, so if you all have certain experiences you can reflect on, I know it's like extra work, but it'll help us get kind of lessons learned into things like documentation, learn WordPress, or even direct changes to Gutenberg. So all of this helps. Yeah. Sweet. What did you all do? See you in Slack.